Welcome back, Sebastian here. So time for my review of spring qualifying for the 2024 US Grand Prix. Bit of an unexpected result given what we've seen in the last 5 or 6 races in F1, but pretty exciting session nonetheless. So for spring qualifying 1, all the drivers were starting on medium tires. Verstappen set the benchmark of a 1:34.698. Perez set a time that was pretty close to Verstappen's lap, but unfortunately for him, he would lose that time to track limits. Norris would then lower the benchmark even further, a 33.919. After that, Leclerc picked him by a bit less than a tenth of a second, I believe. Funnily enough, Albon and Colapinto, the two Williams drivers, set identical times on their first runs, showing how Colapinto's been able to match and get so close to Albon, particularly in qualifying. But the 5 drivers in the drop zone after the first laps, Ocon, Hülkenberg, Bottas, Zhou, and Perez, who of course did not have a time on the board at this point. 2 minutes left to go in the session. Perez takes himself out of the drop zone, moves up to P7, so decent lap there for Perez. Final runs of Q1. Albon, unfortunately, one of those drivers at risk at this point. He would end up performing a perfect 360-degree spin on that short straight between after the penultimate corner. So unfortunately for him, he would not move on. Piastri, a guy who had not had particularly fast times in the session, he had set a time to move himself up into the top 15, but unfortunately he lost that time to track limit, so he would actually be out of spring qualifying 1. Definitely a surprise to see Piastri out this early. So 5 drivers there in the first part of the session: Piastri, Ocon, Albon, and of course the 2 Saubers, Bottas and Zhou. Leclerc set the best time in the end of 33.647. Into spring qualifying 2 we went. Again, all drivers were on medium tires. Sainz set the early benchmark of a 33.274, and Norris not able to set the timesheets alight like he has in past weekends. He was about 0.3 off of Sainz's personal best there. Verstappen, though, decent time. He was 16 hundredths off of Sainz's time, and most of the drivers, so actually six of the 15 drivers, not most of them, but 6 of the 15 drivers in that spring qualifying 2, they set their first lap in the final 2 minutes. So a lot of them were just kind of sitting around in that first part of the session, and that's kind of the nature of how it is when you have so little time on the clock. Tsunoda pips Perez, and this means that Perez, Lawson, Gasly, Stroll, Alonso were all out in sprint qualifying 2. Alonso, Stroll, and Lawson all had their times to lead for track limits. So really it was basically just Gasly and Perez who had their times who were knocked out there. And yeah, very unfortunate for Perez getting knocked out by the sister car of Tsunoda. So let's see, and then also we saw a replay after the session of a potentially impeding incident between Gasly and Colapinto. Gasly going slowly through the first sector and Colapinto going rather quick behind him. So a bit of a close call between the 2 drivers at turn 5, but it was decided no further action for that. So Gasly will not get an impeding penalty for that. Into spring qualifying 3 we go. All drivers on soft tires. The 2 Mercedes go out very, very early. Russell sets the benchmark at 32.845. And while in previous races it would be understandable that the Ferraris, the McLarens would easily be able to match that, wasn't always the case today. So Sainz and Norris can't match them. McLaren neither. All of them are kind of just about a tenth or 2 off of Russell's pace. Verstappen, however, is up after the first 2 sectors, and he goes top by 0.012 seconds. So very, very close between Verstappen and Russell. So that means that Russell's, let's see, so 32.845. So that means basically a low. Verstappen was a low 32.8. So that means pretty close to the race lap record. Of course, the track had been resurfaced earlier this year for the WEC race. So it'll be interesting to see in the main qualifying session tomorrow if they're able to break that race lap, not the race lap record, the track record from 2019. So just a final look at the grid. before tomorrow's race. So we have Verstappen on pole for the sprint, and then Russell P2, so that'll be an interesting one. And then you have Leclerc, Norris, Sainz, Hulkenberg. Really good job for him out qualifying Hamilton. Hamilton a really pretty scruffy lap there. I don't think he was totally happy with that. 8th Magnussen, decent job from him. 8th Tsunoda, and 10th Colapinto. Colapinto, he had a spin early in sprint qualifying 3, and went back outside of time, but I think he was probably on the same tires, so they were probably quite flat spot. So, but that being said, good result for him getting into Q3. Perez 11th, not a great qualifying session for him. 12th Gasly, 13th Stroll, 14th Alonso, 15th Lawson. I thought he was alright. Again, his time before it was to lead was about 2/10 off of Tsunoda's time. And again, I don't think Lawson generally showed last year in his head-to-head against Tsunoda. He's not the best qualifier. And again, first race back at the year on a track he doesn't know. So I think, that time, even though it was deleted for track limits, I think it was alright. 16th Piastri, 17th Ocon, 18th Albon, 19th Bottas, and 20th Zhou. So it'll be interesting to see how the sprint goes. Given how it's not particularly long, I'm really inclined to say that Verstappen's probably going to win. But I think as well, depending on how overtaking is down that back straight, if Russell can get the jump on him into turn 1, perhaps he can hold off Verstappen for the rest of the sprint. So there you go. Thank you so much for watching. I know I've been experimenting with different different types of videos, with the kind of more high-tech videos recently, but for this weekend just decided we're going to do it the old way. That way we won't have any issues and it should be all good. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. Goodbye.